listening to Delmarva Live on 92.7 WGMD, WGMD.com. And Fox News analyst Gregg Jarrett reveals the real story behind Hillary Clinton's deep state collaborators in a corrupt FBI and Justice Department and exposes their nefarious actions during and after the 2016 election in his bestseller, The Russia Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton and Frame Donald Trump, published by HarperCollins. Gregg Jarrett now joins us on Delmarva Live. Gregg, welcome to Delmarva Live, and it's a thrill for us to have you on this broadcast. How are you, sir?
I'm well, Jake. Thanks for having me. You know, I used to live in Salisbury, Maryland. Back in 1985 to 1987, I anchored the news for WMDT.
Channel 47. Yes, someone called the broadcast the other day and indicated that they thought you might have worked at Channel 47, so it's true.
Yeah, and, you know, listen, it was my first job full-time in television. I'd been a lawyer in San Francisco for several years before that, and I loved being out there in Salisbury, Ocean City, Rehoboth, you know, going crabbing in the Chesapeake. It was a lot of fun on the Eastern Shore.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Well, we're dealing with a lot of wet weather over the past week or so, but hopefully the fishermen and the crabbers will be able to get back out there again in short order. Gregg, I have to tell you that your book, reading your book, I have never had a book that made me as angry or angrier as I got from chapter to chapter than reading your book. Now, it's not negative, not a negative comment on your book, but just what I was reading unnerved me and got me so angry as an American. I have never read anything that made me as angry as what I read in each chapter in your book.
Well, Jake, I've been hearing that from most everyone who's read the book. And in fact, it's really the reason I wrote the book. I became incensed over the last 3 years as I was reporting first on the Hillary Clinton email scandal and then how James Comey had cleared her in the face of clear and compelling evidence that she committed crimes. And then the launching of the investigation into Trump and his campaign. You know, as I write in the book and I explain it in great detail, there are 700 footnotes. So, you know, I lay out the law, the facts, and the evidence. There was never any credible evidence that crimes were committed, no probable cause, no plausible intelligence to justify a counterintelligence probe. And, you know, I think readers will realize that facts were invented or exaggerated. It was a hoax manufactured by high-ranking officials within the FBI and the Department of Justice because they wanted Hillary Clinton to be president, and they thought they were smarter than Americans who voted for President Trump. And once Trump was elected, they doubled down and decided that they were going to use fabricated evidence, especially the phony dossier, to undo the election results and destroy Trump. And that is essentially the thesis of the book.
Now, they use the word, and it's a very important word in your book, counterintelligence, to launch what was this phony investigation. Counterintelligence is the key word in this whole thing, correct?
It is, and it does give the FBI greater latitude and discretion, and they knew that, which is why they decided they would engage in this sort of clever feint. They'd call it a counterintelligence probe, but really they were searching in vain for evidence of crimes, and they never found them. Mm-hmm. One of the things I point out in the book, and I had written about this in numerous columns, that there was never any real evidence of collusion between Trump and the Russians. Collusion is not even a crime in a political campaign. It's nowhere in the criminal codes. There was no evidence of any other relevant crimes. Is it a violation of the Federal Campaign Election Act to meet with a Russian in Trump Tower? No. It's perfectly legal. It's not a conspiracy to defraud the government because it doesn't meet the requirements of that. It is not honest services fraud. It doesn't meet those requirements of a bribe or a kickback. So this was all manufactured and exploited by James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, all of these people at the FBI to meet their own purpose and desires, and that was to perpetuate their own power with Hillary Clinton in the White House instead of Donald Trump.
Do you remember back in 1992 when Boris Yeltsin had asked the George H.W. Bush administration for access to Bill Clinton to meet with Bill Clinton before the 92 election? Well, why wasn't that collusion?
Yeah, I mean, there are numerous examples. And in fact, as I point out in the book, there were more contacts between the Hillary Clinton campaign and Democrats with Russians than there were contacts between the Trump campaign and Russians. It's, an entire book, an entire chapter of my book is entitled "It's Not a Crime to Meet with a Russian." This is one of the great myths or canards perpetuated by the media and Democrats. It's nowhere in the criminal codes. And in fact, the election laws specifically state on the Federal Campaign Election Commission's website, foreign nationals may volunteer their services. They may attend campaign meetings. They may provide information. An American campaign could reprint a story in Pravda, the Communist Party newspaper, and it would be perfectly legal.
Right. Well, I was wondering, when you started writing the book and you started to look at each component of the entire scandal, what did you think? Because I think we have become numb to listening to this on a daily basis. Were you concerned that perhaps listening to everything regarding the scandal over the past 2 years, that Americans might have been numb to it and may not have wanted to really relive all these things that have happened in a course of maybe 2 or 3 years? But it looks like, based on how well your book is selling, they do.
I think they do. My sense from people, and I talk to a great many people every day, and they knew bits and pieces of the story, but they hadn't been able to put it all together, because most people rely on anything from social media to television, in which people talk in 15 and 20-second sound bites. And I felt there was a real need for somebody to piece it all together and do so meticulously sourced with the facts and to lay out the law. The media loves to imply or insinuate a crime by using words that connote a crime, like collusion, when in fact it doesn't really exist except in antitrust law as a crime. So somebody need to explain it all. And now that I've written the book and people have bought it and read it, I've been contacted by hundreds of people, email messages and letters and so forth, that they say, thank you for laying it all out. And like you, Jake, they said, I'm angry at the government, the FBI, and the Department of Justice for becoming such cesspools of corruption.
A couple of my listeners posted their reviews for you on Facebook this morning. I'm just going to read them. Gregg's book is great, pulls it all together. Question: given all the evidence that Hillary and the many staffers were in fact complicit in planning and executing a crime to frame another, obstruct justice, and destroy evidence, what is the likelihood the immunity they were given will be revoked? I thought that was a good question.
Well, as for those who were given immunity, most of it was use immunity, which means what they provide to the government, they have full and complete immunity for, but anything else that's discovered outside what they gave the government can be used against them. Some of the statute of limitations have already run on Hillary Clinton, but not all of them.
Right.
I'm not optimistic that Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein, who head the current Department of Justice, will ever take the action they should.
Do you think Jeff Sessions should be fired?
Oh, absolutely.
I agree.
Anybody who talks to Donald Trump, and I've talked to him many times over the past year, it is his deepest regret. And he's been very public about that. Sessions should never have recused himself. He cited the wrong regulation when he did it. He was,
Loretta Lynch did not recuse herself, and you pointed that out clearly in your book,
yes.
Especially after knowing Bill Clinton and being appointed by Bill Clinton in the tarmac meeting. She never recused herself.
Yeah, that whole thing was as crooked as the day is long. And the appointment of a special counsel was, as I argue in the book, illegitimate under the regulations because a crime must first be specified. It was not. All you have to do is look at the authorization order that gave Mueller his appointment. And Mueller should never have accepted the job due to multiple conflicts of interest, which I go through in the book.
Yes.
Rod Rosenstein, who oversees Mueller, he should have disqualified himself at the outset. He's a key witness in the case. You can't be a prosecutor and a witness all rolled into one.
I noted to my listeners the other day that James Comey was the assistant U.S. attorney responsible for investigating and prosecuting the Sandy Berger case. Remember that? Back in 19...
yeah.
Isn't it amazing that people connected with Clinton stuff, they just keep coming up? And again, we don't know what Comey was promised by the Clintons, but did that have any did that factor in at all at what took place when Hillary Clinton needed a pass on the server issue, the email hacking issue?
All of these people, including Comey, were looking out for themselves. They were not looking out for the American public. They were not serving justice. They were subverting the rule of law and attempting to undermine the democratic process. They did it for selfish reasons, to perpetuate their own power. And I think James Comey, is pretty clear to me, thought that he had a better chance of remaining as FBI director under Hillary Clinton than he did under Donald Trump, who was going to drain the swamp. And he was certainly part of the swamp and didn't want to be drained. So, all of these people had a motivation to engage in corrupt acts, which they did.
You're listening to Delmarva Live on 92.7 WGMD, WGMD.com with me, Jake Smith, our very special guest, Gregg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst and Fox News anchor who has written the outstanding book, bestseller, The Russian Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton and Frame Donald Trump. And Gregg, I was wondering if you tell our listeners, Rush listeners call him Dingy Harry, Harry Reid, the treadmill expert, how he got the Russia narrative started. I was very interested in reading that in your book and how the infamous John Brennan was involved in that.
Brennan was CIA director and a longtime Hillary Clinton sycophant and lackey. And he, of course, had the most vested interest in making sure that she was the next president. She would likely have kept him on as CIA director. Trump clearly would not. So it was Brennan who initially got a hold of the dossier that was clearly phony and fabricated. And he's the guy who became the instigator of the Russia hoax. He, more than anybody else, was propagating that dossier to anyone and everyone in Washington, especially on Capitol Hill. And the first guy he went to, of course, was Harry Reid, who was the then minority leader in the U.S. Senate. And 2 days after Brennan meets with Reid, of course, Reid issues and leaks to the media a letter to Comey alleging that there was Trump-Russia collusion. Interestingly, the Washington Post picked up on it, called it collusion, but very few others did. So Reid followed it up with another letter just before the election to try to damage Trump on Election Day.
Similar to the way he damaged a former Mitt Romney, a former Republican candidate for president, by claiming that he paid no taxes, correct?
Right. It was a lie. And then later on, Harry Reid sort of bragged how his lie may have influenced the election. There is nothing you can ever believe from Harry Reid when he opens his mouth.
That is for sure, yes.
He is that deceptive. And this was another one of the, John Brennan, Harry Reid machinations that were so Machiavellian to try to harm Trump and help Clinton.
But this is nothing short of just dropping some bait in the water on a hook and waiting for the mainstream media to take the bait, was it not?
It was, and although some major media companies did pick up on it, it didn't really catch fire until Trump was elected. I think because there was sort of an assumption in the media, as there was in many parts of the United States, that Hillary Clinton would be crowned queen on Election Day.
Right.
And then suddenly, when the unexpected happened, the media began to reconsider and coalesce around the collusion hoax, and they ran with it, and they're running with it still.
Do you have time, Greg, to stick with us for a couple minutes? I just have to get to weather and in a couple of spots, and I was wondering if you could stick with us because I want to give some of our listeners an opportunity. They are anxious to speak with you. Would you be able to hang in there
Sure.
for a few? All right,
Sure.
we're
happy to.
Oh, thank you very much. We're speaking to Gregg Jarrett, the author of the outstanding book, The Russia Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton. We don't want to hear Hillary Clinton anymore. And Frame Donald Trump. Gregg Jarrett, obviously Fox News legal analyst. He's on pretty much almost every night with Sean Hannity, my fellow Long Islander. I'm originally from Long Island, so I'm trying to get Sean to come on my broadcast for quite some time, Greg. Maybe you can nudge him tonight and ask him to come on. But nevertheless, Greg has said that he will stay with us for a few extra minutes. We're going to take a quick break, and if you want to join the conversation, 302-945-9292, 800-518-9292, and pound 927 on your cell phone. This is Delmarva Live. Our special guest, Gregg Jarrett, and we'll be back with Greg.
From Delaware Governor John Carney to Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, we have you covered. WGMD, live from the Lewis Meineke Car Care Center studio. It's Delmarva Live with Jake Smith on WGMD, your storm tracking station. 92.7 WGMD, the talk of Delmarva, and WGMD.com.
You're listening to Delmarva Live on 92.7 WGMD, WGMD.com. And Greg, you have a bestseller on your hands now. Were you surprised that the book went to the bestseller list so quickly? Did that surprise you in any way?
Yeah, it debuted #1 on the bestseller list on Amazon, and we'll find out about the New York Times bestseller list tomorrow. But yeah, I was surprised.
Pleasantly surprised.
Yes, it's the first book I've ever written. I wrote it all myself. I spent 7 hours a day, 7 days a week for 5 months writing it. And, there are times when you're writing it and you go, gosh, is anybody really going to read this? So it was a pleasant surprise.
Well, I think you got Sean fired up last night because he was fired up more last night than I'd seen him in a long time.
Well, he loves the book, and
good.
I gave him an early copy. He read it, loved it, and so he's been a big supporter.
Our guest, Gregg Jarrett, who has written The Russia Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton and Frame Donald Trump. Let's go to our first caller. Caller, welcome to Delmarva Live with our special guest, Gregg Jarrett. Go ahead, you're on the air.
This is Dennis from Berlin.
Hi, Dennis.
I want to thank. I watch you every night on Sean. God bless Sean for making room for you guys in that what's her name, gorgeous Sarah Carter with Tom Fenton, and you're just blowing them a new one. But education is the key, and that's what your book does. That's what the Tea Party did. Because if the masses are asses, in my opinion, and if they were educated, the Democrats wouldn't have a chance because people don't know what they're really all about. And your book helps the public to learn. The other thing I want to bounce off you, and I've heard Joan say this, and this is something I have been saying since Hillary stole the 900 FBI files through this guy Livingstone a long time ago. We wonder why Republicans act so timid, like George Bush, how timid he was, how he didn't really go after the Clintons. This goes to Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions inexplicably hid under his desk. The only thing that makes sense to me is he's written up somehow in those 900 FBI files. He knows Hillary knows something about him in his early days, and he doesn't want that to get out. Same what I think with George Bush. We're just pulling our hair out of our heads. I wish right now Trump would make a recess appointment and appoint a new attorney general. Just to get rid of that guy.
Dennis,
all right, caller, thank you. Let Greg answer. That could happen. Go ahead, Greg.
As I mentioned, Donald Trump's biggest regret as president is appointing Jeff Sessions. If he'd actually had a real attorney general who was competent and capable there would never have been a special counsel to begin with. This matter would have been handled as it should have by prosecutors who are seasoned professionals at the Department of Justice.
Right.
So, that's about whether or not there is a motivation that is subliminal and secret in Jeff Sessions' conduct. I tend to doubt that.
I think somebody's got something on him. I really do. To see the change in character of the things that he believes so strongly in, to see that how he has evolved since being Attorney General, in my estimation, Greg, I think somebody's got something on him, and he's afraid that information is going to come out. I really do believe that.
Well, you never know, and maybe it will.
You mentioned in your book about the what appeared to be coordination from the White House for all these activities between the FBI and the Justice Department, and I'm sure the NSA is in there someplace. Do you think that the former president, Barack Obama, had a hand in this? And if so, from a legal standpoint, now that he's out of office, can he, in fact, be prosecuted if he was found to be using his office to spy on people illegally?
Well, I have no doubt that Barack Obama was intimately apprised, step by step, of all that was going on. After all, he's the one who went on Fox News Sunday and declared that Hillary Clinton committed no crimes. He said she was merely careless. Isn't it interesting that language, carelessness, was substituted for gross negligence, which is a crime, in James Comey's statement?
Very interesting, yes.
Nobody ever accused Barack Obama of obstructing justice, trying to unduly influence a pending investigation, which would be obstruction of justice. But Donald Trump so much as sneezes, and it's the crime of obstruction requiring impeachment. So there's a double standard here. I think Obama's White House certainly knew that Hillary Clinton would be clear. They knew it ahead of time. It's clear from the text messages between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page that Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, knew it in advance. And they certainly knew about the counterintelligence investigation into Donald Trump and alleged collusion with the Russians. Something like that, something that important, the investigation of a Republican nominee for president, is not conducted without knowledge from the Oval Office.
Very interesting. Let's go to our next caller for Gregg Jarrett. Go ahead. You're on with Greg.
Hi, this is Kathy from Lewis. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Kathy. Thanks for calling in.
Okay, Greg, I want to ask you a question. You've been around. Did you ever think our government, CIA, FBI, and the government in general, the people with Obama administration, was as dirty as it is? Did you ever think we could have a government this dirty?
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Good question.
Well, I think it was Lord Byron who says power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I quote that in the book as well. Nothing when it comes to the government and corruption ever surprises me. I was a young man during Watergate and went to work immediately after Nixon resigned in Washington, D.C. On Capitol Hill. I was working there, and I followed Watergate very closely, and it was nothing compared to the Russia hoax and the clearing of Hillary Clinton and the framing of Donald Trump. This, to me, in modern American history, has no parallel.
I agree with you, Greg. Let's go to another caller. Caller, you have about 30 seconds before you have to go to a Fox News update. Please go ahead.
Okay, Angie here.
Angie, quickly, please.
He said the right word when he said cesspools, and I've been saying that since Trump said swamp. Swamp's productive. These people there around that corner and all those circles, they're not productive. They're nothing but a bunch of turds. So think about it when you see them.
Right, Angie. Thank you very much. Well said, Angie. Greg, I want to thank you so much for coming on our broadcast this morning. I know my listeners were excited to have you on, and they are all reading the book, and I've been promoting your book since it came out, and I will continue to do so.